We're back out here at the Big Lake once again, and today we're talking about the 3 things that I look for to help make August bass fishing so much easier and effective. You don't want to miss this one. Stick around. There we go, I got him right. Ooh, that's a good one, that's a giant. Oh, that's a big one. I hope I hooked him good. Oh God, that's a good one. Oh, that's a big fish. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing, and as we trudge onwards through the hot month of August, I find myself more and more by myself here at the Big Lake. You know, it's funny because just a month or so ago, this place was so packed with boaters, so packed with fishermen and people. It was insane. You could not come out here and not be elbow to elbow with somebody else out on the water. But now that that water has gotten really hot and, well, school has gotten back into session, even on the weekends, I'm finding that this place is mostly vacant. And like I said, I think that's very odd, especially because there is some really good fishing that can still be had. Everybody says the month of August is the absolute hardest of the entire year, and that may be true for a lot of places, but when it comes for me, bass fishing is still really good. The last time I came out, I caught 15 in just a couple of hours, you know, throwing the things that I was showing you before, the jerk bait and the crankbait, and I was doing it in the flooded brush. But what I didn't show you in that video and what I'm going to reveal in this video is the juice about why those spots were so effective. Yes, the baits and the presentations were key, but I also knew that there was going to be active fish in those locations because I knew what to look for. Whenever I had the idea to fish those baits in the thick hydrilla, it wasn't, you know, that I was just guessing. The idea is to fish those areas in places I could catch fish with baits that may be a little bit more difficult to fish in the thick stuff. But I knew there were fish in those areas. And the reason I knew those fish were going to be active is because of the 3 things we're talking about today. Fresh water that's oxygenated being fed into the area, cover and shade for those bass to hide in, and deep water access. You say, Lowbrow, that area you were fishing was only a couple feet deep. Yes, it was only a couple of feet deep. However, there is a creek channel that runs right through that part. You can see right here on Google Earth an image of the Big Lake when the lake is on drawdown. And you can see this is the area that I was fishing, and there is a very distinct creek channel. Okay, and that creek channel drops off kind of substantially. You know, it's a good 3 or 4 feet deep, you know, compared to the rest of the area. And that's all the bass really need. They need something where they can feel like they can get away, get safe, or a place where they feel like they can ambush prey from. And that helps significantly. All right, so we know about deep water access. We've heard about it before. We know that it makes bass feel safer. And we know about the cover. You know, all the vegetation, all the hydrilla in there, that's a great place for those bass to hide, okay? But more importantly, all that hydrilla is providing shade. Not only does it provide cover for the bass to hide in, it also provides shade for those bass to get out of the sun. The water doesn't necessarily have to be deep for those bass to want to hide in the shade, especially if we have a fresh water source that comes in and replenishes the water. That does 2 main things, right? What does it do? Well, it oxygenizes the water. And that's one of the things about water in the summertime that can be so detrimental to those fish, is that it can get oxygen poor, especially when something like the thermocline develops. You see it on your electronics, right? It's that hard line that forms in the water. Below that, the water is cooler and more dense, but it's also much less rich in oxygen. So that thermocline, the line between the more rich oxygen and the less rich oxygen, almost acts like a force field. It almost acts like a barrier. Those fish don't want to cross that. However, thanks to a fresh source of water, whether it's a spring or a drain or a ditch or whatever, but in this case, it's a creek that feeds into the main part of the lake. Like I said before, this is the very northern part of the lake. This is where that creek flows in and brings cooler water, which helps cool the area down, and it also brings in rich oxygen. So instead of blabbing about it, why don't we go out on the water? Why don't we go out in the little boat, and I'll show you just exactly what I'm talking about in close detail. Why this is a good place, and an example of a place that doesn't actually meet those needs, although it looks like it might. So let's head out on the water and we'll talk about it. There we go, I got him right. Ooh, that's a good one, that's a giant. Oh, that's a big one. I hope I hooked him good. Oh God, that's a good one. Oh, that's a big fish. I foul hooked him at the top of the head. Come here, buddy. That's still a really big fish. Come here, open your mouth. Open your mouth, there we go. That's a really nice fish. He went after it and missed. Look at that gorgeous fish. Let's go ahead and weigh this one. Let's go ahead and weigh this one. It's got to be, this one's, I don't know, 2.5 pounds. This one's maybe a little more than 2.5. It's not huge, but a really nice fish. 2.15. Thank you, buddy. We sure do appreciate it. You really are a gorgeous fish. Thank you. Okay, there we go. On to the next one. Now this here, you see how shallow we are. We are in, I don't know, 1.5 feet of water here. And up there, we have where the main creek flows in to this lake. Now, this is where I've been doing a lot of the fishing. You guys have seen a lot of the videos that I film up here when I talk about going north. This is where I'm coming to. This is the very northern part of the lake. And you can see just how shallow it is. But what makes this really good, and we're about to hit it right here. Do you see that drop off right there? We just hit the main creek channel. Did you see how that dropped off? Now we're in maybe 8 to 10 feet of water, and then we're going to cross that main creek channel, and we're going to hit the other side, and you'll see that it comes back. There we are. Now we're back on the other side. And we can follow this creek channel. See, it's got the sharp edges. We can follow this creek channel all the way up to the mouth of this creek. And that's what makes fishing in here so productive. We have the main creek channel right here. You can see the edges of it right there, where it goes down and it gets deep. And then you can see where it gets really, really shallow. So we've got about a 10-foot wide creek channel in here that drops down quite substantially. And it goes up to that area up there. That's where the creek flows into this lake. So that's what I'm talking about. We've got the vegetation that gives us the oxygen. We've got all of that. Not only do we have a fresh supply of oxygen coming in and cooler water coming in from that creek coming out of the north, but it churns up that water and keeps that oxygen dissolved in the water, and it keeps the water cooler. So that's going to attract the bass in this area. Not only will it make them come up here to become resident fish, but it will make them more active. And more active fish are easier to catch. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. Those are the three things that we need. We need active water flowing in. We need to have a whole bunch of vegetation as well to provide shade and cover for that area, so shade and cover. And then we've got to have deeper water access, so we've got to have a whole cycle going on, and that's what's keeping this area fresh and fishable all summer long. This right here is an example, a perfect example of a back pocket that I rarely fish in the summertime. You say, lowbrow, but it's got everything that you were talking about. It's an isolated pocket, nobody fishes it. Look at all that hydrilla, look at all that grass. There's a lot of oxygen in this water, right? Well, there's two things that are going against it. First of all, this is just flat and shallow, and it just goes back that way and just kind of peters out. There's no fresh water access. There's no drains, there's no ditches, there's no culverts, there's no creeks, there's no nothing. So this just sits back here, okay? It doesn't really get stagnant, but it's not really fresh. Yes, it's got a lot of vegetation, but there's no deep water access and there's no fresh water. So as a result, even though there's all this beautiful, luscious hydrilla that you just want to flip and punch all day long, there's not really a lot of bass in here. I've never caught any bass back here. Maybe one or two in the summertime, but none of them have ever been any good. Now, in the spring, this is an amazing spawning pocket, but that's in the spring. In the spring, conditions are completely different. So we have to remember that we need all three factors. If you don't have all three factors, well, then you just need to keep right on moving. So while it is important to have cover and deep water access, the biggest thing that we are looking for is a constant supply of fresh water. It cools that water down and makes it more bearable for those bass in the hot weather. I mean, wouldn't you like that? I mean, isn't that something that we all would like better, to have a source of cool water to cool us off in the hot summer? So that's going to attract the fish. And another reason it's going to attract the fish is because that water is going to be constantly mixing. It's going to be constantly churning, which keeps it oxygenated. It holds a much denser concentration of oxygenation. So we've got deep water access, which the bass are attracted to. We've got cover, which the bass are attracted to. And most importantly of all, we've got a fresh water source that constantly replenishes cooler water. And it doesn't just extend right there to the front of that creek mouth. It extends all the way down, maybe a quarter of a mile or a half mile, or even more, all the way down, depending upon how strong the source is. You know, in the case of the Big Lake, where I go, as I showed you in that video, there's two sources. So there's two creeks that come in. So it really mixes, it really creates that current. And the current isn't so much the focus point here as much as what is being brought by that current. That's what we need to key on, right? So whenever you're out on the water next time, even from the bank, this is something you can do, especially from the bank. You don't even have to be in deep water because we're focusing more on shallow water. We're focusing more on places where those fresh creeks can come in and feed that back bay or feed that back pocket or whatever. You know, the fish are going to be attracted to that, especially this time of year. So there you have it. The next time you're out on the water, look for those three key things: cover, deep water access, and a supply of fresh, cold water that provides oxygen, current, nutrients, and cools the surrounding water down. You find those things, and not only will you find bass, but you will find bass that are active and more inclined to bite because they're in a better mood. They've got the deep water access and they've got the cover to make them feel safe and ambush prey. And plus they've got more oxygen and cooler water, which makes them feel energized and it makes them feel better. So next time you're out there, look for those things and watch the results. Watch the improvement in your August bass fishing. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.